Hello, everyone. I am here today with Ted Rubin, who is a leading social marketing strategist, keynote speaker, brand evangelist, and acting CMO of Brand Innovators. In March of 2009, he started using and evangelizing the term ROR, which is Return on Relationship, and has a hashtag of #RONR if you want to follow. Many people in the social media world know Ted for his enthusiastic, energetic, and undeniably personal connection to people. Ted is the most followed CMO on Twitter, according to Social Media Marketing Magazine, one of the most interesting CMOs on Twitter, according to Say Media, number 13 on Forbes' Top 50 Social Media Power Influencers, and number 2 on the Lead Tail list of top 25 people most mentioned by digital marketers. And today we are going to talk about how small businesses can improve their digital and social presence. Ted, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no problem. And I think more excited to have you. Like I mentioned a bit ago, been following you for a long time, and I am totally stoked to have you on this show and really see what you have to say, because I know this is a hot topic for many small businesses. They see what a lot of big businesses are doing. There's some envy there. There's some, feelings of discouragement because they don't feel like they can. But I believe that small businesses can. There are some things they can do, and we are here to have you help them with that. So to kind of just dig into everything, what do you feel is the first thing a small business should do before they start their digital and social strategy?
Well, Dave, I think like with anything else, the first thing a small business should do is listen. Pay attention, watch their customers when they either come in the store or see what they're doing online, talk to people, talk to friends, go to people's pages. I mean, what I see happening is a lot of people, they read books, they read articles, they ask experts' opinions, sometimes they even hire a small agency, but they don't really pay attention themselves to what's going on, what's happening in their business. First of all, are their customers even interested in social media? Is it a place that they're at? I mean, I would say in general, these days, probably everybody is there, but there are certainly people who have businesses where social media might not even be that relevant. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be paying attention to it, but it might not be where they want to put most of their time. So, just to summarize that in one simple word, listen.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, good old-fashioned talking to your customers, but on the digital frame, in the digital world, are there any good tools a company or any good strategy you can use to help a company with their listening on social?
Well, my first advice is going to be forget about tools and just start going to the platforms themselves. Mm-hmm. The best way to learn how these platforms work is to actually go on them and use them. So now I'm not saying you have to go onto Twitter and be an active tweeter, but, get a Twitter account, start watching the feed, follow people, see what they write. Spend a lot of time doing this. And remember, there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn. This can take up a lot of your time in your initial, let's say, research side of things. Mm-hmm. Another huge mistake I see people doing other than just not listening is not participating. I travel a lot with my business partner, John Andrews, and we work on different projects together. And very often we come into rooms and we get questions just like this, and we go, okay, so well, what are you doing now? And they go, well, nothing. We haven't decided what to do. And I'll say, well, are you using the platforms? They go, no, we're talking to other people about it. Why wouldn't you go in and use them yourselves? And by the way, I believe this is not just for small business. I believe all businesses need to get people using these platforms. I believe the C-suite is in desperate need, especially on the Fortune 500 level, to start taking a look at these platforms and seeing what they're about. They all watch TV. I mean, who would invest millions of dollars in a TV commercial without understanding how TV works? But most of these executives and even these small businesses are investing time and money in these platforms without experiencing themselves. I mean, I can't tell you how many small business people I see hiring. It can either be an intern, or they're hiring a local practitioner or a small agency, or they're just getting a friend or a family member. It could be their kid. And very often it is. And by the way, I don't say that in any negative way. I mean, well, I use the word kid just because that's the way I talk about my children. But, you know, taking their 22-year-old son who works at their restaurant to start doing their social, but they don't bother understanding it themselves. They would never hire a cook and not understand what goes on in the kitchen. You know, they would never hire a bartender and not know how to pour a drink themselves. And I think that's the biggest problem. And this is so easy to do. Go to Twitter. Sign up, get a handle. Again, don't feel compelled that you have to produce and put out content. Don't even feel compelled that you have to be in the beginning a part of a conversation, but start observing what happens. Do the same on Facebook. You know, I'm going to tell you how scary it is, Dave. I sit in the rooms with big company executives whose titles are Vice President of Social Media. And when I say to them, you know, I can't find your social presence, they go, oh, I don't do social. How could you not do social? How could you even make that kind of a ridiculous statement? Fine, you don't want to do it. Don't go telling me that you don't do it. How can you possibly understand how to do it for your company? And their answer will be like, well, I do it so much for my company, I don't want to do it for myself. I said, oh, and then I'll back off for a second. I'll say, okay, so, but you have a Twitter handle that you go to every day. No. Well, what about Facebook? Oh, I don't really like Facebook. You know, I go there, but I keep it limited to my family. I go, okay, I understand you wanting to keep what you post, but you go to other people's pages, right? Well, no, not really. How can you do that and not understand what these things are about? So I got to tell you that first and foremost, you know, beyond the first part, which is starting to listen and pay attention, is go in and participate. Now, the next step beyond what I'm saying is just looking is, yes, do try, post a comment, see what happens. Write something on somebody's page. You don't have to create your own new things. Watch the conversations that are happening. Be a lurker. Participate in a way I call participating vicariously. Watch the conversations of others. If you don't do this, you can't possibly understand or use these tools to their best advantage.
By the way, I love your passion. I love your passion.
Well, and by the way, I did ignore part of your question, and I will jump back to it for a moment. There are a lot of tools you can use. My point is that before you worry about the tools, understand the platforms, understand Instagram, understand Facebook, understand Twitter. And again, I don't have a full understanding of these platforms, and I've been doing them for years, and I work with companies doing them, and I use them aggressively in my own personal brand building because I don't know everything about them. I learn things. I use things that work for me. Very often I learn new things. I always listen to people. I watch what others are doing. And then I see how can I apply these things to myself. But back to your first question, yes, there are tools. So, you know, I use something called Hootsuite to manage multiple Twitter accounts and different social accounts. You can use a free version. The version I use, I think it costs me $20 a month, and I have 20 Twitter handles and 2 other people helping me with some of that stuff. So that's not a very big expense for a small business. I use Buffer on occasion. I don't do a lot of scheduling of tweets unless I'm working with a brand that requires it and asks me to, and I don't do a lot of that kind of work, but I do periodically. But Buffer adds some additional functionality in addition to what Twitter does. You know, then I use another tool, and sadly to say, because all these things are it's like phone numbers that we don't remember anymore. A lot of this stuff is in my bookmarks. I don't even remember the name of the tool. I'll try to get it to you before the end of the call. But I use a tool that helps me follow and unfollow people on Twitter handles, for instance. Oh, Crowdfire. Okay, they changed the name, so I didn't remember. It used to be called Just Unfollow. It's called Crowdfire. I use that to follow back people that follow me. I use it to research and find people who are talking about topics that are important to me. So there are, and I got to tell you, there's so many tools out there. All you have to do is go to Google and search it, or again, just listen on the handles and see what other people are recommending, or even make it easier, put a question out and say, hey, I'm new to this. You know, I'm curious if my followers could give me a recommendation of some great tools to use.
Okay, very cool. Now, moving on to like a little bit deeper. Now, you're listening, but you know, when you start your social strategy, or for sure your digital strategy, a lot of focus these days, or not these days, but in the past and currently, is keyword research. How much does this play a role in developing your strategy? And then on top of that, any tips or good tools that you've used to accomplish this correctly, to give some people a direction in regards to the SEO aspect of all of this?
Well, Dave, I'll tell you, I'm not a big proponent of that, and it's not because I don't think it works. I think it's great. It's because we all have to kind of specialize in things that we're better at, so I don't spend a lot of time with that. I do my own keyword research, mainly to find topics that are important, not to include keywords in things that I write. So, again, I'm not an SEO expert. There are people that know a lot more about this than I do. This is not really my wheelhouse. What I think is more important is worrying less about the tricks that get people to see what you're doing and producing a lot of great content and then making sure it appears in a lot of different places. What I've learned is the best search is when your stuff is out there a lot, is when you become known for writing about things, when you write one-liners and you use them over and over again. So I talk about syndicate, syndicate, syndicate. So let me just give you an example of what I do. So first of all, and this goes, and I might be going off into another topic you had a question for, so I hope you don't mind. I tend to ramble a bit.
No, I think we all just want to hear what you have to say.
My head's like a Twitter feed, so, it kind of stuff goes through it, and then I go off on tangents. But, my thing is I hear a lot of complaints, and it has to do with this, that we don't get enough attention, enough people don't come to us, and also how do we create a lot of content? It's overwhelming, especially for a small business. And what I think happens is people think that creating content is hard. It's really not. I mean, I have content waiting in the wings that I can't even keep up with, because what people don't realize is content is a photo. Content is a tweet that becomes a conversation. I like to say that conversation is the best content. So if you can create content that people start talking about or start talking with you about, to me, that's a great thing. And then I also like to say, is that the best content is content that creates the result you're looking to achieve. So your brand might be about fast cars, but if talking about attractive women gets people coming to your page and talking about fast cars, then you've achieved your end result. And don't let somebody say to you, hey, man, you're off brand. Your brand is about fast cars. Yes, probably at your website, at your core, at the heart of your brand, you want to talk about what you do. But as far as how you get people there and how you get them interested, you have to use what works. So what I do is I create content, and then I use it in many, many purposes, and I repurpose it all the time. So I write tweets that end up turning into one-liners for me, like relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become. Now, that's something I will use again and again and again. And when I write it and I see people really like it, but more importantly, they get what I'm saying. In other words, they don't just like it. I could, just make any comment that people like, but that they're it has meaning to them, or real trumps perfect, or more facilitation, less fabrication, or a network gives you reach, a community gives you power. So I write a lot of tweets, and then the ones that take hold, I use again and again and again, and then I expand them into blog posts. And then if I write a blog post that's 3 paragraphs, I might repost it 1 paragraph at a time. And then anytime I write a blog post, I post it in like 4 different places. So usually very often I'm in a good position. I write for other brands. But whenever I write for another brand, they know that weeks afterwards, I'm going to start reposting that same blog in different places. So let's say I write a brand for the Future of Commerce, SAP Hybris' blog, which I write twice a month for. 2 weeks later, I will post the same post on tedrubin.com. And in the bottom, I'll write originally posted at wherever. Then 2 weeks after that, I'll post it at the Social CMO. 2 weeks after that, I'll publish it on LinkedIn, then Medium, then HuffPo. The same blog post. Now there's an old SEO myth that runs around the blogging community and with a lot of content producers that you can't, if you post a blog multiple times, that Google will punish you. It's absolute nonsense. Okay, especially if you put a link back to the original post. Okay, all you're doing is classic syndication, and the more places your post appears in, number one, the more likely it is that people will see it. And number two is the more likely it'll get indexed by Google and picked up in that way. And then I take it a step further. Every time I post it, wherever I post it, I then take that post and post it to Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, and anywhere else, and Twitter. So it gets posted at SAP Hybris' Future Commerce blog. I put it out on all the different social channels. Then when I post it at tedrubin.com, I put it out again at all the social channels, and so forth and so on. And then, like I said, what I'll also do is very often I'll take a blog post and take almost the whole content of it, or part of it, and post it as text on Facebook. Because very often people are more likely to read what you post as text on Facebook than click through to a blog post. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Please, go. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you're making a great point, and I just wanted to reemphasize it for everybody is a lot of times people don't, and you hear this a lot, is, splice it up. Take a post, and now you have lots of different pieces of content for different platforms, and apply them correctly per the platform. Obviously, you can't post on Twitter what you would post on Facebook and such. But you make a great point that a lot of people fall short on, and they just do one thing and they don't realize, like, hey, you have a lot of content within this content. So take that, splice it up, and repurpose it, and it'll go a lot further. So you mentioned how you do it specifically, and I just wanted to reemphasize that that's a fantastic strategy that I think a lot of people need to incorporate.
And so important for small business, because you don't have 500 people in your marketing department. You don't have people creating content at agencies. You're doing it yourself. And, I mean, this is I tell this to big companies all the time, because I MC events for brand innovators all over the country, filled with brand marketers, and their biggest complaint is, oh, my God, it's so hard to keep up with all the content. And I kind of look at them and go, why is it so hard? Even for big companies it's a challenge, but for the small business, this is so important. And then let me just give you a couple other tips. First of all, start leveraging your employees. Now granted, there are a lot of small businesses where it's just two people, or it's just one person, or, you really don't have anybody that's doing anything other for you than maybe baking in your kitchen. But a lot of small businesses have additional employees who are smart people, who are capable of creating content. Start leveraging that. Give them a voice. Don't do it as here's an extra job function for you. Do it as here's a way for you to help start building your brand, because you're probably not going to be here forever. You might want to start a business like this yourself one day. So why not help support and learn and then share their content? I mean, what I'm trying to do is give these people the tools to realize there's so much more at their fingertips than they realize. I mean, just content of you walk into your office and you take a photo, or like, okay, yesterday I'm on a train. I'm heading to visit my daughter in Philly to have brunch with her and her friends, at University of Pennsylvania, and I see an ad on the wall from Blue Point Brewery out in Long Island, and the ad itself was a mistake. There's a mistake in it, and this ad is being posted everywhere. So I haven't even posted it yet, but it was one of the many things I took a photo of that I'm holding, because I'm going to put that out at some point and make a statement about editing your content before you post it all over the world. And that's for me, because I'm a marketer and I'm a guy that's trying to teach companies to do things. So, I mean, everywhere I go, I was at lunch and they served this amazing brewed cold coffee in like a beer bottle that I'd never seen before. So I take pictures of it and I post it out with a comment. I tag the company. I talk about what an amazing product it is. And then I tag one of my business partner, John Andrews, because I know he will love this. And what am I doing? I'm talking about a product. I showed everything about it. But what I mean is it's so easy to create content. And then here's another thing I think a lot of companies are lacking on, and it's really important to small business. You can use your content again and again as long as it's evergreen. So if you write a post about next week's sale, or about the 4th of July, with something specific about an event this year, okay, that's a one-time thing, or maybe a couple times right before it goes. But if you're writing a post about how to bake the best cupcakes, or a great place for breakfast, or here's a great meal to eat healthy and stay fit at the same time, why not use it again and again and again? I mean, I can't tell you again how many conferences, and then when people go, well, we already posted that, so why wouldn't you post it again? I mean, so many companies are forgetting the basics of marketing, reach and frequency. I mean, the more, remember, the number one is you want to post it again and again and again so people get it. I get people at events all the time. Somebody who doesn't get it will raise their hand and go, you know, Ted, you wrote that tweet the other day, and I think I've seen you post that 5 other times. And somebody else in the audience raised their hand and goes, yeah, I'm so glad he did because now I remember it. That's
or saw it for the first time.
Exactly. And then the other thing is, if you're growing your following, remember that every month you have new followers that have never seen what you've posted. So a lot of the content you posted, and don't think they're digging back into your blog, you know, a year ago when you wrote a post that's still totally relevant. So what I do is I'll take those posts and I'll reformat them a little bit. I'll change maybe the title. I'll change a little bit something, and then I'll post them again. I mean, I never run out of content. It's like my problem is I don't have enough time to post it all.
It's a good problem to have, right? But you've gotten to the point where you have a system where you now have just plethora of content, and it didn't start that way.
No, I'm glad. Exactly. I was just about to say, Dave, I think we are really simpatico here. You know, maybe we should do a talk show together. No, exactly. When I first started, so first I got into Twitter. It was the end of 2008. I discovered this platform that was, for me, was like manna from heaven because I think in 140 characters. And I've never been a long-form writer. And I was always better at talking. All of a sudden, I had this platform where I could write something. And instead of someone saying that's all you got, they'd pat me on the back for getting a point across in a small amount of characters. And then I started building a following. It was the early days. And then a mentor of mine said to me, you know, Ted, you have to have a blog. I'm like, what do you mean? I got Twitter. You know, I've got Facebook. I'm posting there. He goes, no. You need to own something yourself. You need to have something that nobody, you know, remember, Facebook owns Facebook. Twitter owns Twitter. You need a place that's a repository for yourself, and it's a place that builds your brand. You know, TedRubin.com. And I'm like, oh, do I really have to do this? You know, I don't even know how to write. He goes, just jump in and do it. And I got to tell you, if you go back to the beginning of my blog, you'll see my posts are like once a month. And then they started getting closer together, and they started narrowing. And my posts were shorter, and they started getting a little longer. And then I started, you know, Seth Godin is a mentor of mine who I worked with back in 1997 to the end of 1998, and I learned so much from Seth. And one of his tips is if you have problems writing, write the way you talk, and you'll never have a problem.
That's a great point.
So, right.
I mean, that's a very good point.
And stop worrying about it being perfect. I mean, I got to tell you, the only thing I really worry about being perfect are my, like I can take a day to get the right title. Because not because I worry about the rules of title writing that you can read all these blog posts about, just because I want it to make sense to me. But what I've learned is that I stop worrying about it being perfect. Otherwise, they'll sit on your desk forever. Put it out there. First of all, remember something. You can always update your blog. You can always fix it. You made a spelling error, you correct it. If someone wants to call you out for that, fine. You know, I laugh. I never call anybody out in public for grammar errors. I'll write them a personal message, and I don't call them out. I'm just giving them a heads up. Hey, Dave, just want to let you know you use there instead of there on your post. You might want to fix it. Because I don't want to call you out publicly. I just want to help you, you know, and correct it for you. But even if you don't, in the end, it doesn't really matter. I got to tell you, I've got a meme out there about I'm trying to remember which one it was, but one of the girls that works for me put one of my sayings on a photo. We do a lot of those, and she left out a word. And I got to tell you, it was the pinned tweet on the top of my @Ted Rubin Twitter account, to the point where I think it has 300 retweets. Nobody ever noticed it. I noticed it, and I'm like, oh my God, like, it's missing the word more. Like, it doesn't make it. Somebody, and the way I noticed it, let me tell you how I noticed it. A very good friend named Shane Shirley wrote a blog post and put some of the best quotes from top social media people, whatever, and she quoted me, and I read it, and it was missing a word. And I wrote to her and I said, Shane, you left out the word more. And she wrote back and said, I got it off, and she sent me the image she got it off of. But and then she wrote right back to me, she goes, I guess nobody cares. You have like 300 retweets on this thing.
Well, it worked, right?
You know, well, it worked. You know what happens also is, you know, our mind puts words in places for us. I'm sure you've seen some of those images on the, like that they put on Facebook where it says, if you can read this and you read it, it's missing half the letters or half the words because our mind replaced all that things. I mean, it's basically how speed reading works, because your mind will fill in the blanks for you when you go through things. But again, the point I'm making is, you know, and she wrote back to me, she says, well, Ted, it's perfectly in line with your brand. Real trumps perfect. And people also people like when people aren't perfect. So again, this goes back to get out there, post the content. Don't worry about it being perfect. Get it out, see how people react. But back to the original piece of advice: always be listening. Because if you write something that's a mistake and somebody calls you out, fix it. If you write something that people don't like, or that you insult people but you just didn't realize, as long as you're listening, you can always fix things. It's when you post stuff and then you turn around and walk away that you can have problems.
Yeah, don't have paralysis by analysis, and definitely listen. And on the listening part, we won't go into details of how to do this, but all these platforms have settings where you can get an email in your inbox when somebody comments or says something. So if the listeners don't know how to do it themselves, get somebody who's, you know, vaguely familiar with these platforms, and there's easy settings that you can do, so you don't have to be staring at them all the time.
Yes, and here's a great piece of advice for small businesses. You really want to stand out. Answer people's comments on Facebook and Instagram. Nobody's doing that. The Fortune 500 companies ignore it because they're so into siloing their businesses. I mean, they're so siloed that if you try to talk to somebody at an event who has the title mobile marketing and you mention digital or traditional marketing, they go, oh, that's not what I do. Like, really? It's about your brand. You know, but they're trying to silo social platforms. So what's happened is Twitter has become the de facto place to comment and respond to people and have conversations, whereas the vast majority of brands, and I'd say well over 90%, you can post all day long on their Facebook comments or on the post they put on or write comments, and you will never hear back from them. And it's pitiful because the ones that do, you know, really make headway. And remember, you need to communicate where your audience and how your audience wants to communicate. You have to stop trying to drag them to where you want to communicate. I would assume people in your audience who are listening now have kids, teenagers, right? And try this. Have you guys ever tried to call your teenager on the phone? I will wager you a bet that within seconds you get back a text that says, "What?" with an exclamation point. Okay? They have no interest in talking on the phone, and what they're letting you know is, I heard the phone ring, I was available, but I will not answer it. If you want to communicate with me, you better text me. And I learned this very quickly as a divorced dad. You know, I was desperate to hear my daughter's voices. I still am. But I learned very quickly out of need that if I called them, they were not going to pay attention, that I need to communicate the way they wanted to communicate. So I'm going to tell this to all your small businesses. Stop listening to the advice that says drag them to your email list. I don't mean don't try. Absolutely try. And as long as they're comfortable with it, great. But that person who keeps sending you direct message on Twitter or keeps commenting on your Facebook page or even says to you, this is where I'm at. I mean, I have this happen to me all the time. So let's just say I get someone who wants me to be on a podcast. And by the way, this is not a reference to you because, Dave, you're a terrific communicator. But I get this all the time. I'll get a DM that says, we'd love you to be on our podcast. You know, and I go, great, email me. And I'd love to discuss it. And then I get a DM back like hours later. Okay, well, how about next Thursday at 12? And I write back and go, tedrubin@gmail.com. Email me. And then 2 days later, they come back and go, hey, we never heard back from you. And I'm like, I don't think you're paying attention. This is not the way I work. If you want me to be on your show, you need to email me. I get this when I travel out. I tell people I will meet and visit with anybody when I'm in a city. As long as you come to me and you work around my schedule, I will always try to find a time to make myself available. But again, they'll say to me, how about 2 o'clock on Friday? I go, great, send me a calendar invite. Make sure it hits my calendar. Otherwise, I won't be there. And then they don't. And they said, but I told you when it was. Why couldn't you put it on your own calendar? You know, if you want me to do something for you, then you need to communicate the way I want to communicate. If I want you to do something for me, then I need to communicate that way. So I just think it's a really important lesson for small businesses because they're being told, okay, to save time, make sure everybody who complains comes here, or this is the process. But, you know, that's not the kind of world it is today. People want you on the platform that they're most comfortable with. And it's a really important lesson and something every business needs to learn.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, those are some great pointers. And kind of circle back around, we've talked a lot about, you know, communicating and listening and getting out there. But I would like, you know, as much as this is talked about and repeated, it still bears repeating again now about deciphering, like, how much, you know, what should they be talking about? Should they be talking about, should a company or brand be talking about themselves or their product, service, benefits versus talking and communicating about general problems or questions that the industry has? And if it's a mix, you know, what's your opinion on how much of each, or if it should be weighted in one direction? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, I think people are overcomplicating things. I don't think social is that complicated. And, you know, contrary to popular belief, people don't sprout two heads when they sit in front of a computer screen or look at their mobile phone. Okay, we didn't do it when TV came out or when cell phones came out. You know, there are important basic tools. Number one is you're not your customer, so do your research. Know what's important to them. Listen to their conversations. You know, I like to say that businesses are out there complaining every day that not enough people are coming to their Facebook pages anymore because organic search is dead. Well, how about going to their pages? How about stopping worrying about who's coming to your page? Although I can give you tips at some point, maybe another show, on how to make that happen more often instead of worrying about, you know, the Facebook, your feed, and organic search. But start going to their pages. You know, whenever I speak to any audience, one of my slides is a fly on a wall. And I like to ask the audience, what is this? And, you know, some of them say a fly. I go, well, it's the proverbial fly on the wall. And you know the expression, I wish it could be a fly on a wall in that meeting. But guess what? Every consumer in the world is inviting you into their living room, and nobody's going. I mean, I say this to companies with all the resources in the world. I'm sitting in front of 1,000 people. They're all brand marketers. I go, how many people in this room or somebody on their team goes to the pages of the people who like their Facebook pages, who follow them on Twitter, to the Instagram feeds, and see what they're posting? And if I'm lucky, 2 hands go up. All that, forget about the tools to do listening. How about just going and seeing what people are talking about, taking a few minutes every day, making it a part of your morning and your afternoon to see what comments are out there. So, you know, that's number one. Number two is try all different things. You never know what's going to work. You know, again, use a little common sense. Think about your industry, your people, the people you're trying to talk to, what their likes and dislikes are, and then try different things. I like to say that I'll try something, and then if it takes hold, I drive a truck through it. So I like funky socks. I wear them all the time. I wear them on stage. People started noticing them years ago. And back, I think I'm thinking 2010, okay, I was on stage, and a blogger named Sandy Jenny started taking pictures of my socks. And then she posted them, and people started commenting. This is six years ago, maybe longer. And it was at an event, and it was a mom blogger event, and the next day everyone wanted to know what socks I was wearing, so I posted it, and the third day I did it again. And then the event ended, and I thought it was over. And every day for the next month, somebody's popping on saying, I wonder what socks Ted's wearing today. And now 6 years later, I post my socks every week, sometimes every day. And I build stories around them. I'm on the way to visit my daughter in Philadelphia, you know, and I'm wearing my socks about, you know, just be nice. Or I go to see my daughter at a play, and I wear camouflage socks. And I say, hey, my daughter told me to keep a low profile and not be very they can see me. Do you think they can see me? Or I just take pictures. Other people want to take pictures. I have my own hashtag, Ted Psaki. Now, people would say, well, how is that relevant to you being a social marketer? What's relevant is that people talk about it all the time. People send me socks in the mail. I haven't bought a pair of socks in 5 years. I have 100 pairs upstairs waiting to be worn. I walk into New York City office buildings, and Fortune 500 CMOs or CEOs walk up to me and go, oh, my God, hey, Ted. And they stick out their foot because they want to take a photo with my foot and their foot with our socks showing. And people walk up to me at events and say, hey, what do you got? And it's a way to start conversation without having to worry about what they're going to talk about. And people ask me all the time, when am I going to stop doing this? And my answer is, I'm going to stop doing it when people stop caring. Now, what I can tell you now is when I go a few days without posting my socks, inevitably I get a dozen messages saying to me, are you okay? Or what's going on? Or where are your socks? I mean, so I keep doing it. Now, it's very authentic because I love wearing all these funky socks. So it's not like I tried to do something that wasn't me, you know, wearing a tie that I don't wear ties or, you know, so think about trying different things. And then when you post different things, if something takes hold, use it because it's creating conversation about you and your brand.
Now, that kind of leads right into a question I have about, you know, using emotion and humor in your marketing. For some companies, it's a no-brainer, but do you see this as something basically all companies should give a go and see what sticks or what hits?
I think people need to be human. I think that the most important thing is when you're out there on social media, so much of it is robotic. Even if it isn't robotic, you're given pre-approved tweets you can send from a brand. You work at FedEx and you need 5 levels of approval to say thank you, or you know, it's gotten to the point where people get these answers that are so mechanical. They don't use your name. They don't talk like people. So what I'm going to say is, whether it's humor, whether it's being snarky, whether it's just answering with a nice smile and an emoticon, showing people that you care about them. I don't care if this is at a major B2B company. The person on the other end is human. They want to know you care. When you use their name, it means something. Dale Carnegie says the most beautiful word in any language to any person is the sound of their own name. So if you follow me on social, whether it's Facebook or it's Twitter or it's Instagram, you'll notice that almost always, as much as I can, I answer people with their name, even when people text me. If you text me, Dave, now not once we get into a conversation, but if you text me and say, hey, Ted, are we still doing that, you know, that podcast today? You're going to get a text back from me with your name in it, saying, hey, Dave, absolutely, or yeah, we're going to do it, Dave, because people then feel like you're communicating with them. So what I'm going to say is, I'll give you an example. JetBlue years ago, it's become very famous. We don't have time for it now, my JetBlue story, but at the end of this back and forth conversation I had with JetBlue about a problem I was having on one of their flights, when they came back with an answer letting me know that the bags for my flight, I was on the way to Austin, were on the New Orleans flight, and the New Orleans bags were on the Austin flight. They then, after they told me what they found out, because we were trying to figure out why we weren't taking off, they said, still want to take off? You know, and they were being cute. They were being snarky. And now, if they had just said that and then walked away, that could have developed into a firestorm. I could have written back saying, how dare them, make such a wise comment when I'm sitting on this plane. But they listened, you know, and I came back and said, very funny, like, no, of course I don't want to take off without my bags. And but there are brands that do those kind of things, and then a firestorm breaks out, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, you can't say things like that on social media. You can say almost. I mean, try to remember any of the major social media blow-ups that we've had in the last few years, and see if anybody even remembers them. Does anybody even care about that comment that agency guy made about cars driving in Detroit? Does anybody care anymore about the CEO of, I don't even remember which brand it was anymore, who made a comment about elephants tucks or hunting? You know, it blew up for a second. It was given more life by the brand itself by either ignoring it or jumping in and defending themselves and just saying, oh, you know what, that probably wasn't appropriate for this thing, let's move on. So I would worry less about the way you do it. Jokes are great as long as people receive them well. So I'll give you an example. In my world, I made a joke on Twitter a few years back during the, 2 elections ago, about Sarah Palin. And somebody was talking about how popular she was, and I said, well, you know what, even Soupy Sales was popular. Now, you might not be old enough to know who Soupy Sales is. I think you're about, what, 45?
41.
41, okay. So I guess you graduated college a little bit later, because if I did the math, I thought I had that right, but who knows? So you're 41, you probably don't remember. Soupy Sales was a slapstick comic back in the 50s and probably early 60s who did a lot of stupid things. So immediately when I wrote that, I didn't realize I had a lot of Christian mom bloggers as followers, because I was very involved in the mom blogger community, and a bunch of them, you know, took issue with it and got very like, what are you saying about Sarah Palin? But because I was paying attention, I was able to like if I had walked away 5 hours later, this could have been a major dent in the brand of Ted Rubin. But instead, within minutes, I was back in saying I was making a comment about popularity, not about brains or intelligence. And they immediately came back and said, okay, I get your point. They might not have liked what I said, but I was there. I did my damage control. I had used some comedy, and it didn't go over so well, and I was there to fix it. So, and then other times
they'll probably like you more for it at the end of the day because you were communicating with them. They probably felt like, wow, that's awesome. You know, he's listening.
100%. You know, that's a great point, Dave. I'm glad you brought that up. When you're human, when you get in, so if somebody makes, like, don't delete comments, you know, unless, you know, if someone puts a ranting, inappropriate comment in your feed, it's one thing. But if somebody writes in and doesn't agree with you, you know, what people love is that I'll come back. Like, some guys were criticizing me recently from the UK about all the Twitter handles I had. And they were throwing out some snarky tweets and saying things, and it became this whole conversation. And I jumped in and started answering all their tweets. And I answered it with, this is why I do it. This is what I do here. This is how I handle it. By the end of the conversation, these guys are now supporting me and sharing my content. Because they appreciated it. And by the way, that didn't mean they agreed with me at the end. What they appreciated was that I was willing to share my strategy and how I approach the market with them.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've personally gotten better over the years is, hey, don't worry about what the situation is right now. You know, just worry about what it's gonna be. You know, you can take care of pretty much 99.999% of issues or problems or challenges just by, you know, figuring it out, talking, you know, communicating, and then you come to find out that those people, you're right, those are going to be your brand evangelists. It's so funny how that happens over the years. So look at those as opportunities, maybe not even as a challenge. Just look at it as an opportunity. Like, hey, sweet, now I have the opportunity to engage. Now I have the opportunity to turn this passionate person in my direction, because those ones who are going to be out there squeaking the most, they'll be squeaking in your favor at the same time. There's just those sorts of people.
And even if they still firmly disagree, look, I always try to keep everything. I've had a lot. Look, I'm anti-Trump, and I'm a Hillary supporter. I'm a Clinton supporter. And I've had some conversations that have gotten heated on the other side, where people have gotten upset with me. And I just maintain. Look, I maintain my demeanor. I state my point. I thank them for their input, and every once in a while, like I had a conversation once with a group of dad bloggers, you know, who I didn't agree with their point of view, and, you know, a couple of them started saying, you know, I hate your condescending, I appreciate your input. And I'm like, you can hate it, but it's legitimate, because I really do appreciate it. I love conversing with Trump supporters and understanding, first of all, I agree with some of their points. I want to understand how they think. And by the way, if you're a marketer and you don't want to understand how the people that don't like your product think, then you're missing a huge opportunity to turn critics into supporters.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, those are the, just to reiterate, I mean, those are going to be some of the most challenging situations are the ones that have the most opportunity, because those are the people who are out there making noise, and you can turn them to make noise in your favor. And it's not anything about, sacrificing the way you think or what you're believing in. It's a matter of just stating your point. And you can't ration with crazy sometimes, but in general, though, the majority of the population is not crazy. You can't. That's a great point. You like to say that we're in a weird time right now with this election, but the majority of the population is not crazy, and they just have their own opinion.
That's a good point. You can't be rational with crazy, but but what is around all the time is there are haters all the time. So my opinion is haters hate, and I just don't engage with them. I thank them for their input and I move on. And most of the time, not always, they will walk away because they want the people that fight back. They want the people that get angry with them. So, the other thing is, and you made a good point earlier, is people respect you when you state your opinion and you stick by it and you're not bullied. I tell brands this all the time. Don't apologize, number one, if you're not wrong, and number two, if you don't mean it. So even if you're wrong, don't apologize unless you're going to do something about it. Don't just apologize to say, I'm sorry. I mean, this is not like a husband and wife going to bed and you don't want to go to bed angry. This is, personal life.
That's the one exception to the rule. That's the one exception to the rule.
I got to tell you, Dave, there's this great old Tim Allen, what was it? The show where he was the home improvement guy. It was called Home Improvement. And there's this great episode where he's been married for years and years and years, and his brother-in-law, who's much younger, is finally getting married, and he's giving him advice about how to have a good marriage. And he goes, let me just tell you, You wake up in the morning, and the first thing out of your mouth is, I'm sorry, and you just keep saying it till you go to bed. And
It's similar.
I don't have a great marriage. But, back to the other thing is, don't apologize if you're not sorry. Explain your point. I mean, look, I've had situations where, I've had, mom blogger trolls come after me because I posted a video on Facebook of a kid being ignored by his dad on the beach. And I'm told how inappropriate it was. I violated their privacy. And, first of all, it was from a distance where you couldn't see their faces. It was on a random beach. I didn't even say where I was, and I just made a point about being present for your kids. And look, I'm a divorced dad. I take any moment I can with my kids, and it upset me. And they jumped in, and they got all upset, and I just didn't back down. I wouldn't let them bully me. And I came back and said, listen, nobody knows who these people are, and even if they do, there is no such thing as privacy anymore. If you're on a public beach, then you've got to realize that there are going to be people taking your pictures, taking videos. Now, there might be people in your audience that don't agree with me, but I was willing. What I did was I had a 20-minute conversation about this on Facebook, expressing my opinions, never losing my cool, even when some of these women went totally off on me and called me some, not so nice names, and I just answered them with dignity and with my opinion. And by the end, the vast majority of them were thanking me for having the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're right in line with another big social media superstar, Jay Baer, who I think he wrote a book called Hug Your Haters, and it's about. I personally haven't had a chance to read that one, but I've seen a lot of his posts and everything, and it's basically about getting out there and turning these advocates in your favor, and it's basically doing exactly as what you're suggesting as well, just engaging and explaining and moving on.
I love Jay's book. I wish it was called Hug Your Critics, because it's very hard to hug haters. And one big part of my advice is ignore haters, especially when they're inappropriate and cruel. But Jay's real point is hug your critics. In other words, embrace them. Remember that critics are probably giving you great input, because as JetBlue likes to say, if one person is complaining, the odds are there's another 150 people with the same complaint. And if you respond to it and answer it and talk about it publicly, you're going to be saving yourself time, because you'll be solving and addressing the problem for all those people at once, which is a great point. And Jay, when he speaks, it's really what he says. Jay's a great speaker, and I got to tell you, something most people don't know about Jay is one of his best talents is, and something I pride myself on, but he's probably better, is emceeing events. We're very different. Jay is incredibly prepared, knows about all the speakers, what they're talking about. He did that at an IBM social commerce conference, and impressed me innumerably. I also have had a great panel with Jay at Social Media Marketing World, and he's a great moderator, so I have a lot of respect for Jay.
Yeah. Well, I have a ton more questions, but we're about out of time, so we're going to have to save those for another time. But any parting thoughts you'd like? You've given people, I think, a great direction, some great advice. And again, everyone, this is coming from a person who is ranked number 2 on the top 25 people most mentioned by digital marketers, top 13 on Forbes, top 50 social media power influencers. So listen to this guy. He knows what he's talking about. But do you have any parting thoughts before I have to let you go?
Yeah, I'm going to leave you with, I got a few parting thoughts. So first of all, I'm going to say in the future, it's going to be critical for small businesses to decide where they want to put their scarce resources so they can maximize their ROI. Because, look, I talk about return on relationship, but in the end, I say what return on relationship will do is enhance your ROI, because in the end, it's all about return on investment. And I believe that in our personal lives, too. We do more of what gives us a better return, that makes us feel good, that gives us the value that we perceive as value, and we do less of other things. And businesses that use social successfully, in my opinion, will reap the rewards of customer satisfaction, deeper employee loyalty, more effective knowledge sharing, improved brand reputation, lowered costs, and really importantly, increase revenues. So remember that relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they will become. And I'm going to leave you guys with one last tip. Start using the phone more to actually make phone calls. I know it sounds like something that's really hard to do, but what I love to do when I'm at events is I hold up a phone and I ask people what it is, and they say it's an iPhone, and I ask them what's the biggest word in iPhone, and invariably the audience shouts out I, and I laugh and say, no, it's phone. It's not all about you. And I give them a challenge. I challenge them because I tell them that everybody has apps on their phones, but most people don't realize they have this app that if you press 7 to 10 numbers, you can actually hear somebody's voice. It's remarkable. You know, you don't have to use emoticons to express emotion. You can yell. You can laugh. You can whisper. You can do so many things to express how you're feeling. So I want to challenge your audience to pick up the phone at least once every day for the next 30 days and call someone they haven't spoken to in a while and just ask them, what is there I can do for you today? How can I support you? And if they have time to talk, great. If you get them a machine, leave a message and call somebody else. And try this and see how it changes. Because what I will tell you is that a brand is what a business or a person does, but a reputation is what people remember and share. And people will talk about this, and this will build your reputation, especially in the small business world.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you very much. This is probably my easiest podcast I've ever done. I just turned you loose, and I think we got a ton from you. A lot of great advice, and you're hearing this from one of the very top social media marketing guys around. So, you know, get in there, start listening, start engaging, get your employees involved. You know, pick up the phone to answer your questions. So basically just get involved, and don't automate everything. You know, use the tools out there that he mentioned, but they're just tools to help you get involved on a personal level. So Ted, thank you so much. Like I said, there's a ton more I want to talk with you about. We'll have to save it for another time, but I greatly appreciate you and your time today, and till next time.
My pleasure, man. You make it a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.